Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks with me, your host, Dr. Lisa L. Campbell, the Growth Motivator. Today, I am joined by Monique Derouen, who is the author of How to Unapologetically Yourself. I said, I said, I don't necessarily have a potty mouth, but I will say that word. Sometimes I say it when I'm driving. Somebody cuts me off. But anyway, um, I'll let you say it more than I say it. But I want to welcome you to the show. And I want to thank you before we even have the conversation for being brave enough to call out our sugar honey iced tea. Shit. So, Monique, why don't you tell our listening, viewing audience about you and your background, where you're from? I'm in Chicago, by the way.
Okay. So I'm Monique Derouen. I'm originally from Lake Charles, Louisiana. And in 2018, I moved up to Glenwood Springs, Colorado, which is a beautiful space. And a little bit about me, I had a pretty rough first half of life and made a lot of mistakes, got into a lot of trouble, just sabotaged the heck out of my life. And I thought when I moved to Colorado, it would all be new and all be different. And my kids were grown and it would just be me and my husband, and life would just be beautiful and amazing and easy. And Lisa, I was wrong because everything from the first half of my life came with me up here. And um, inspired me to start talking about it publicly and sharing, you know, details and tips. And I finally came out of it. And I do now have a beautiful and amazing, lovely life. And I'm thrilled and honored to live it. And I am honored to be here with you today.
Well, you know what? It takes a lot of kahunas to be able to own your stuff and then write about it. I often think of the stories that we tell ourselves. And we think that if we physically move our bodies from one place to the next, that things are going to change. But if you don't resolve your stuff, it's going to stay with you.
Agreed. Agreed. And like I said, I had this big idea that I would just get in the car, we would drive 24 hours away, and it would all stay in Louisiana. It would all stay in the swamps. It would all stay there, and, life would be easy here. And, yeah, I was mistaken because all of that was inside of me, and I was just retransplanting it somewhere else.
Wow. So, you know what? Something I was just thinking about. So, you moved from Louisiana to Colorado. There's a lot of people who move their kids out of Chicago because they don't want them to, get involved in the Chicago violence drama. But this is the reality. If your kid is bad, the problem is not Chicago. The problem is within them. And no matter where you move them to, if you don't solve whatever the root cause of their issues are, they're going to have the same problem when they move somewhere else.
Right, right. And, I should have known better because I've done this before. When I was
Mm.
when I was in my early 20s, I was 22, I had 2 toddlers. We moved from Lake Charles to Austin, Texas, and lived there for a few years, and kind of the same thing, I was just running away from my reality. I was in a pretty bad space, and I thought, "Let me get these kids, let me get them out of this area, let's start over somewhere fresh." And to be fair, I learned a lot, and it was a great experience and a lot of heartache. I mean, I went through a whole slew of things in Austin as well. And I don't regret it. It was a great move, but it didn't solve the problem. And I see people do this in leaving relationships, leaving their jobs. It's like we think that if we just switch the environment, that everything will be fine. And maybe momentarily it does. And we get that little dopamine hit and it feels good. But those things that are in our nervous system, those things that are in our tissue and our memories and our emotional body always come back up when they're re-triggered by something that feels familiar. And because we're creatures of habit, we tend to do the same things and we re-trigger those wounds. And then we think, well, let me just change something else. Let me move somewhere else. Let me change the job. Let me end this relationship. And we do these cycles over and over and over, and then wonder why we get exhausted and not get the results that we want.
Whoa, you just walked down a couple of folks' neighborhoods, their blocks, stopped by their house, and dropped off some some, what do you call it? I'm in your face, talking about again the stories you tell yourself.
Yeah.
So something you said that also, I don't want to say it triggered me, but it made me stop and pause. When you moved to Denver, your kids were grown. And so people think, oh, the kids leave. And so now I'll be in this new life. But if you still have unresolved issues, they stay with you. The people moving in and out of the house, you moving in and out of one state does not resolve the issue. You got to do the work within in order to move forward.
Right, right. And, my kids were grown. They had both graduated high school, and we had a rent house next door. So we decided to put them into the smaller rent house. And it was just like, hey guys, if you can pay the electricity and the Wi-Fi and the water bill, you'll be able to live really easy, really good right here. We've set you up for success. We pulled out of the house that day, and it was hard to leave the kids. Um, and what was crazy is that we came up in a camper. We're driving through Colorado. We're spending a couple months just kind of exploring. And my husband and I were together for the first time ever, in our marriage. And I was like, man, this is really weird. This is really interesting. And I caught myself in the same habits and behaviors that I was doing in Louisiana, starting to drink a lot in the evening, just kind of feeling that hopelessness, that despair. And I mean, we're in a beautiful, amazing area. We started out in Denver and we kind of just drove through the state. And so we're up in the mountains and we're in the parks and the wildlife. And it is like a little bit of heaven. And I am miserable. I'm miserable. The kids are still the kids. They're kinda getting into some trouble. My mom's still fussing. My siblings are still the same, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh. Did we pack up and leave everything for nothing?" You know? It was very eye-opening.
Wow. Well, first of all, I'm jealous that you can just pack up and drive and explore. My husband and I talk about this every day, how much debt we have from student loans and the mortgage. And I would love to take a cross country trip, actually, where we could just be free.
Mhm.
And I know that I am person outside of the debt that I have, I can't say that there's anything else in life that keeps me up at night. Literally, like once I decided to walk away from my full-time job to pursue entrepreneurship full time, I've had this peace that you can't pay for.
I Yep, I get it. I get it.
Now, on one hand, there's this, and I told someone this recently, and they were like, "What?" So when I was working the full time job and running my business, my bills were on autopilot. So the mortgage first of the month. Actually, the mortgage was coming out twice a month, right? So I was making an extra payment a year, and so here we are. Fast forward to 2 years later, my mortgage gets paid in that month. And I used to be like, it used to bother me, but then I had to have a conversation with myself. I said, it may not be on the first of the month, but your mortgage is getting paid every month. You've been in this house for 20 years. You are still, I don't want to say living the American dream, but I'm still able to make ends meet. I just had to shift how those bills were being paid. And if I could be honest, initially, That was the reason why I didn't want to quit the job. And I would say after, let's just say the first 6 months, maybe 12 months, patches of my hair started coming out because I was so worried about not being perfect with the mortgage.
Yeah.
And once I let that go, my hair started growing back. Now, this is not my hair. Um, I paid for it. I paid to have it made. But my natural hair is now growing back because I had to let that stuff go.
Yeah. Dr. Lisa, that's a huge part of what I do with people. When I work with clients, it is understanding that stress creates so many chronic ailments. It's the kicker, right? But if those root causes, if those old memories, if that old trauma wasn't in our body, it might not spark it and make it come up to the surface. It might lie dormant in us for our entire life. But when we have those moments where those unconscious memories, those patterns, those behavioral things that we've been taught through society and generations and religion and, you know, things many, many years before us are now in us, and then something stresses us out beyond the norm, beyond the regular day-to-day stress. Now it's an eruption, it's a push up. So it's no wonder that you had hair falling out. I was a hairdresser. I started cutting hair in the 90s, and that was one of the things that I learned at the very beginning of my career is that stress makes hair do strange things. And as I began to really explore more about, when we're not aligned, when we're not feeling good, when we're off, things happen. Our backs hurt, we get headaches, our digestive system acts up. Um, and this is just the way the body does, and it's a protective measure. And if we could listen to the language that our body is saying in that moment, if we could go in and regulate our nervous system and work on those stress levels and have support in a way that felt good, we could ideally undo this really easily, but the reality is most of us weren't taught how to do that. I know I wasn't. It was something I learned through this experience.
Oh my gosh. So let me just tell you, as a person who grew up in the black church, it was basically like, turn it over to Jesus and he's gonna work it out. Okay, but there's also another part in the Bible that talks about faith without work does not work. So you still need to do the work, but in order to do the work, you need to have the tools. And many of us don't have the tools. When I think back to, I'm 52, even though I look 25. Um, when I think back on my adult life and some of the things that transpired, back then I didn't have the tools. But today I know that it is important for me to meditate. It is important for me to take my self care beyond nails and hair. It extends into my intentional time to journal, to read my books because I love reading books, but also going outside and just taking in nature, which is so beautiful, are just a fraction of the tools that I have in my tool belt that I didn't have previously.
Yes, and I'm right there with you. I do a morning routine every single morning. I'm up before the sun. I journal, affirm, meditate, and move, and it's a 4-step process that my mentor taught me years ago, and it has completely changed the way I function in the day. And at first I was like, well, how do you get up before the sun and, have energy? And, I'm so tired from the night before and the busyness of the house. And I was making excuses. And one day I just said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get up. I'm going to get up before the sun. I'm going to get my journal out. I'm going to write for this amount of time. I'm going to move my body for this amount of time. And what I found was during the day, I was more present. I was more aware. I had more regulation in my body. I wasn't snappy. I wasn't exhausted at the end of the day. And I thought, there might be something to this. Maybe she was right, right? And so I rinsed and repeat and rinsed and repeat, and eventually created just a very standard everyday morning routine, less than an hour. That hour is just for me. And if I would have had this when my kids were little, I truly believe I would have changed and shaped things much differently. But I think I had to go through the pain and the guilt, mainly, of not knowing any better to really implement it now and let it make a difference in my life.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And you know, it's so something I realized. I was so busy doing that I wasn't being, like I wasn't living in the different moments. And reading was one of the things that I used to do, that once I realized that that was something that was previously a part of my life, I let it go. When I pulled it back in, there are several things that I learned. And one of them speaks to something you just said. There are several books and research that supports the concept of having a morning routine, and several authors have written about it. Sharma, can't think of his first name. It might be Robin. Wrote a book called The 5 a.m. Club.
Yep.
There's another book called The Morning Miracle, right? And I wasn't exposed to these books until I made the decision I wasn't gonna no longer be held hostage by salary and benefits. I wasn't going to allow that to dictate how I navigated life. But ultimately, I decided I had to become comfortable being uncomfortable, letting go of that job, picking up my books again, and really being in a place of peace that it's hard for me to describe it how I feel. Like, I get up in the morning and I get up with a sense of purpose that's driven by my desire to help other people in a way that I know that they need to be helped, because it's all the ways that I've been able to help myself. But when I was juggling the job and the business, I just was going to bed at night, waking back up in the morning, irritable, really just not nice to my husband. And who wants to live like that for the rest of their life?
Yeah. I'm with you. I agree. And it's funny you talked about your husband just now because I thought the same thing. I thought, man, I don't know how he dealt with me all those years.
He really loves you. He
He
really
does.
does.
Yes. Because, I was just in a really bad space, and I was short with the people that I loved, and I was angry, and I was exhausted, and I couldn't understand how to change it because I'm like you. I would read the books. I would hear, "Let's get motivated. Let's get into momentum." And I would wake up and I'm like, "Who's motivated to jump out of the bed at 5 a.m.?" Like nobody wants to just jump out of the bed at 5 a.m. It's crazy to think that. So when I normalized, it's okay to not want to get up at 5 a.m., but do it anyway because you want the result. And what I learned through all of this was motivation was a lie. Like, I kept thinking, you know, if I can motivate myself, I'll follow through. I'll stick to the diet. I'll stick to the workout. I'll, do better at my job. I'll bring in more clients in my personal business. I was also in corporate and personal at the same time, right? If I could just get motivated, I would clean the house and, the kids would look nice and all these things. And it was like this ideal. And then I'd have guilt because I couldn't get motivated. But what I learned through all of it is the discipline to get up and do it even when it was hard created the trust. So instead of motivation, I learned to trust myself because I was following through and then I would get the results and I was like, "Oh, give me more of that." More of that became the dopamine hit, the feel good. And so the more that I honored myself, the more I followed through, even on the days that were hard, the more I got the results. And it was just that consistency over time that completely shifted my external reality. So I quit running away from what was in front of me and I became the way that I wanted to feel inside so that I could see it in my external world.
So actually, you learned how to shuffle the deck and flip the switch.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I was dealt a bad hand, Lisa. I mean, I grew up in Louisiana. My family was very poor. We have a lot of religious trauma. It was really hard. I have lots of siblings, 12 siblings. My parents were divorced very young, just very oppressed, very, you know, just not a good life. And I kept thinking, well, this is just the way it is. I was dealt this hand, woe is me. And it was very victimy. And one day I heard my own thoughts, and it was like, well, it's just the way it is, Monique. Just get over it. People like you can't have this. People like us. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, is is that real? Is that true?" And I began to question, like, what if I could change it? What if I could be the one that got out? What if I could be the one that moved? What if I could be the one that did something more? We were never influenced or motivated to go to college or have good jobs. It was just like, "Hey, stay out of jail. Stay out of
Don't
jail.
go to jail.
Don't go to jail. Walmart can pay you minimum wage. You can be a manager there." It was like that was the inspiration. That was the expectation of our family. And, you know, it's not right or wrong. It's just what was. It's just what was. It's just what we were used to. And we didn't know any better.
And you know what? I honestly believe it's that generational trauma of the things that we didn't talk I'm not going to say we,
Yeah, yeah,
they didn't talk about.
right.
Right? I believe that my grandparents, their parents, and to some extent, my parents, aunts, and uncles, there's a lot of things that they have that they are basically going to take to the grave. And I know that there is power in releasing those things. It opens you up to so many wonderful things, not only about yourself, but about life. But you can't see them when you're walking around with these blinders on,
Right.
or you're just going with the status quo. And listen, there's nothing wrong with working at Walmart, Target. I
Nope.
was a manager at McDonald's in 1989. It was a great start for me. But I, in my heart, knew that I wanted more.
Yeah.
And so staying at the same job for 40 years was not in my it was not in my horoscope. They still have horoscopes?
They do, they do. But I think that's a good point. Like, I'm with you. My mother was a manager at Walmart for years, and I worked there when I was a teenager, and that's why I use that example. And it's true. Like, there was a part of me that knew as a little child that I wanted something more than what I was exposed to. I remember sitting in the bathtub and holding the back of the shampoo bottles and trying to read the words and wanting to enunciate them and use proper verbiage and really not knowing how. But there was this part of me that was like, you can do better, you can do more. But it was never like my parents never were upset if we made bad grades, or it was just don't get in trouble, don't embarrass us, don't go to jail, don't be a problem in the society. That was their main concern. And so it was just like, okay, if the rooms aren't clean, it's okay. If we don't have dinner scheduled at regular times, that's okay. If your grades slip, it's all right. Like, I don't remember them asking to see my report card or telling me to, you know, you should do better than this, or you could do better, or do you need help with something? It was just like, oh, okay, this is where we are. Okay, this is where we are. So it was just that settling. And again, I guess for them, that was how they were raised, and it's not wrong. They just didn't know any better. They didn't know any better, but like I said, I think there was a part of me that always did know I was a little bit different, and I wanted a little bit more. And that was really hard as I got older because society tells us and the world tells us to be safe and fit in. And so when you're going against the norm, when you're breaking the patterns in your family and you're saying, "No, I'm not gonna do this. I'm no longer available for this," they push you away. You're no longer welcome because you're different. And, you know, the human only wants safety. The brain only wants safety. So it will negotiate and do things out of survival to make sure that we're safe. And so I was stuck with this foot on the gas, foot on the brake, and I was just spinning out my tires, exhausting myself, fitting into the box that everybody else was in, knowing that I was supposed to be outside the box.
Wow. We are such kindred spirits because I knew that I needed to be out of the box as well. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it is possible to rewire your brain.
Mhm.
And how do I know that? From reading books, which is why I love 52 Authors, 52 Weeks, because I get to learn from your experiences, the other books that I'm reading. And I know that you don't have to be a victim of your community, your upbringing, your nationality. You don't have to be a victim to all of those things. There's so much that's available for you. You just have to be willing to step outside the box and chart your own path.
Yeah. I think it's just, being open to hearing something in a different way that you can relate to or absorb. For so long, like you said, blinders, I call them earmuffs. Like I just had my fingers in my ears and it was, this is just the way we do it. This is how you survive. This is how you get through. But when I read a book or I saw a workshop or I was introduced to a mentor that said something that resonated in just a little different way, all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait, whoa, that's different because we only know what we know.
Mm.
We only
Say
know what we
that again for the people in the back.
I mean, guys, we only know what we know. And so we don't even know that we don't even know all of this other stuff is there. And I started thinking, well, I've never been to every restaurant in Italy. How would I know who has the best spaghetti? Like just silly things like that started coming together in my brain. And I thought, well, what else don't I know? What else have I not been exposed to? And I didn't know that the body holds the score. And I didn't know that we could rewire our brain. And I didn't know that our body is this brilliant, magnificent self healing machine. It has its own pharmacy. It knows how to, heal our skin if we have a wound. It knows how to repair bones if they get broken. I didn't understand all that, you know? And so as this became my normal conversation, I realized our body has a language and our brain has a language, and they're speaking two different languages. And there's a miscommunication. There's a lack of someone there, um, you know, explaining to the two parts what they do and how they can help each other. And when I found that missing link, it blew my mind because all of a sudden, ailments and issues and diagnoses that I'd been dealing with for years began to dissolve and just go away. And then as I began to feel better, it was easier to create abundance and heal relationships and communicate differently. And my health, my wealth, and my relationships completely evolved in a way that I had never been exposed to as a child. And I was just, it was shocking. I don't have another word. I was shocked.
Wow. Wow. Well, listen, Monique, we are almost out of time. And so there's a couple of things I want to do before we go. Number one, I want you to tell our listening viewing audience where they can find a copy of the book, where they can find you. And then I want you to leave us with some tips, some words of wisdom, whatever you want to share with our listening viewing audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So the book's on Amazon. It's called How to Unapologetically Unfuck Yourself. It is a mind body approach to changing habits and behaviors to create the life you want. It is a very simple read. It's fun, it's got pictures, it's easy to follow, and the cool thing is that at every chapter, Dr. Lisa, I decided to add a workbook page that gives you an action step because we can read all the books, we can have all the knowledge, but if we don't put it into action, it's just information. And so I want to help people integrate what they know and embody it. And so we made action steps for each chapter. Super fun, super simple. If you want to connect with me, I am on every platform in social media: Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, Instagram under Monique the Mind Body Coach. You can look me up that way. Um, I things that we have going on. We have a lot of workshops and continued education. If people want to learn about these modalities and things, that information's there and I'm happy to share it with you. So whether you're a practitioner looking to how to help your clients and integrate this in, or whether you are a human in the world that's just looking how to break some cycles, I've been through all spaces and can direct you to that next step if you connect.
I
Um,
I love it. Are you on MySpace?
I am not on MySpace. It's
That
so
is so old.
It is old. I actually never had a MySpace, and I made a Facebook on accident. This is the funniest thing. I made a Facebook on accident, but it's literally where I do my work from is on Facebook and social media. So I always post events, workshops, Zoom things that we'll be doing, free stuff, paid stuff. So no matter where you're at and what you have going on, connect with me on Facebook. You'll get a lot of information there and just next steps and tips and tricks. Um, what do I want everyone to know? I think the hardest thing for me to understand was that healing was easier than what I thought it was. I thought healing had to be this really hard, in depth thing. And I realized through this process, it's actually simple. It's simple, but most of us are in survival mode and we've never been taught how to use this part of ourselves. We've never been taught how to listen to our body, how to listen to the different languages it speak and interpret it, and you can shuffle the deck. You can change the habits and behaviors. So get out of your head, trust your body's wisdom, connect with me if you have any questions, and stop waiting. Just be you, take up space. I always say the easiest and the hardest thing you'll ever do is be yourself. And when you break that cycle and you become yourself, you come back home, everything aligns and just moves in a simpler, easier direction. So be you.
Oh my gosh. Well, listen, everyone. I just finished chatting with Monique Derouen, author of How to Unapologetically Unfuck Yourself, a mind body approach to breaking patterns and creating the life you want. Monique, thank you so much for being here today. And to our listening, viewing audience, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We will see you next week. Thank you.